Okay, everyone, we're going to get started. Thank you very much for joining me, and a big hello to those who are watching the replay as well. For those I haven't had the pleasure of meeting before, my name's Adam Barralet. So to give you a bit of a background on who I am and where I'm from, so I grew up in the hills of Western Australia, surrounded by bush and trees and different things like that. So for me, I always had this close affinity with nature. It was part of my childhood. And so as I started to get older and start to wonder about what was life all about, things such as crystals and essential oils also became really, really important to me. In that as well, I also found that I had a strong passion for things that I say stood the test of time. So especially astrology, which we'll be talking about today, and tarot as well. And over the last decade or so, I've had the privilege of releasing a few books and then traveling around the world, and of course, teaching online different ways that we can learn to work with the energies of and the influences around us by using Mother Nature's gifts, such as crystals and essential oils. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. So, as I said, I've got everyone who's watching live on mute. Please, if you have any questions, we've got the chat function, which is always great, but this just ensures that we get a nice, clear recording as well. So today we're going to be looking at Mercury retrograde. And what, first of all, is Mercury retrograde? Well, it started a couple of days ago and it will go until mid-May. What exactly is a retrograde? Well, logistically, in the sky, if you pay attention to the sky each day, you'll notice that the sun travels along this path. And if you actually watch, the moon also goes along that path as well. Now, not only does that so the sun and the moon go along that same path, but if you pay attention, you'll see all the planets go along that same path as well. It's called the ecliptic plane. So once upon a time when I was younger, I thought the planets were just all up in the sky randomly, but they're actually all in this two-dimensional plane. Now, along that plane is what I call 12 suburbs or 12 stations. And I kind of imagine them, they're like trains going around. And those stations are named Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, and so on. They're the zodiac signs, and they're named after different constellations that are in the sky. So what happens with a retrograde is one of the planets they'll all be going this way, and then suddenly it looks like it slams on the brakes and starts going backwards. Now, do planets change direction in the sky? No, they don't. How it works, it's a bit of an optical illusion because astrology is based on the fact that we think Earth is the center of the universe. But as we know, we're both revolving around the sun. So here's Mercury and here's us. And we might both be going that way around the sun. And then Mercury, because it's got a shorter orbit, starts going the opposite way. So that's why it looks like it's going one way. And then when it comes round, it's going the other way. Don't worry too much if that kind of gets your head a little bit buzzed. But basically what happens is it looks like it's going backwards in the sky. It goes backwards through the signs a little bit. And what our ancestors noticed is that it actually takes away its influence in the time. So what do I mean by that? Well, we know that each planet, Venus and Mars and Jupiter and so on, they all have different influences. And Mercury is to do with the conscious mind. So primarily our thoughts, so our intellect, not so much our intuition, but our intellect, and then our communication. So what we can expect generally, and we're going to go more deeper than just generally today, is what we can expect I like to think of the planets as our parents. And they're here to help us out all the time. But when they go retrograde, they go on holidays and they leave us at home by ourselves. So Mercury, who normally helps with our quick mind and our agile mind and being able to find solutions and also being able to communicate clearly, he buggers off. So we're on our own. So in this case, we have two choices. We can either fall on the floor and go, oh, Mercury's in retrograde, it's all too hard, and just not live life until about the 14th of May. Or we can go, right, I'm on my own. I'm going to put on my big boy or my big girl pants, and I'm going to get out there. I'm just going to do my best. Now, what I love about this is what will happen is we will find that we'll have communication breakdowns. This offers a lesson, and each retrograde actually offers a lesson to improve ourselves, to grow, to learn, and thus to ascend. And so communication, we know, is key in all relationships. They say, what's the most important thing in any relationship? Communication. And we're kind of blessed because Mercury goes around the sun so quickly because it's so close to the sun, we get short little retrogrades of about 3 weeks, 3 to 4 times a year. So this allows us to keep checking in of how am I doing with my communication? Where is there a breakdown, and how can I kind of improve on that as well? So, what we're going to go through today is a little bit about, okay, so how can I improve my communication? Where your pitfalls might be, and what you can actually work with to actually improve that as well. Now, I shot out a couple of emails and that beforehand to make sure that each of you knew your Mercury sign. So can I just let me know in the chat, those that are watching live, if you did get that. If not, I'll quickly help you out with that. But to those that are rewatching, if you do a quick Google search, okay, cool, we've got a Cancer. Let me know what everyone got. If you're watching the replay, basically if you just Google what is calculate my Mercury sign, and you'll find a few different calculators where you pop in your birth details and it tells you quite quickly, kind of thing. Cool. So what this means is, remember how I was saying all the planets go around this train track, this ecliptic plane? When you were born, where was Mercury? Which suburb was it in? And so we all know our star sign, which is also known as our sun sign or our zodiac sign. That's where the sun was when we're born. And I like to describe that as, okay, that's our black and white outline. So, you may be a Leo or a Gemini or a Virgo or whatever that may be. And you'll have those general characteristics of that. But where the planets were actually give you they color you in. They bring in the different colors. So your Mercury sign is the way you kind of think, the way you process information, and the way that you communicate. It's kind of the way that you deal with the world. You take the stimuli and what you observe about the world. And remember, we observe things in different ways based on our mindset. There's something called you may have heard of it, called the RAS, or the reticular activating system, which basically says we look for things that confirm what we already believe. So an example of that, if I told you about the increase in green cars on the road, you'll go for a drive later today and you'll notice, oh yeah, there are a lot of green cars. Like, I keep seeing Teslas since my friend bought a Tesla, and I've been thinking, oh, Teslas are cool, and that kind of thing. Do you find that? Same thing, if I told you your partner was cheating on you, then you'll start to look for evidence of that as well. So this is kind of an interesting way of how our brain works. So as we go through your Mercury signs, you may get some interesting insights in there as well. It can also be helpful to, grab that calculator that you used before and also calculate the people that you're closest to. If you've got a partner, if your children live at home, if there's a best friend, anyone who you have kind of close interactions with as well. So that's going to be your Mercury sign. Now, another thing to consider in this retrograde is obviously Mercury is now going backwards in one of the signs as well. So that kind of says where in our life the communication problems might break down. This one's in Taurus. So this Taurus is very, it's an earth sign. It can be pretty much all of the Mercury retrogrades for the rest of the year are all in earth signs. So it suggests anything to do with work, money, comfort, investments, property, and all those kind of things is where there could be communication breakdowns. So where I really want you to be mindful over the next few weeks is at work, and anywhere to do with money or even talking about money in that way. That's where these problems come up. So you don't have to look at my face for the whole entire session. I have got a bit of a slideshow that's going to kind of take you through some different things. What this will give you as well is, obviously each of you have a Mercury sign, and you'll be very eager to find out what I'm going to say about your Mercury sign. But I'd also encourage you to, while you're listening along, if you've got time, quickly throw in a partner's or someone else's, thing in the calculator as well. Or, come back and rewatch the replay, and you can work out what everyone's Mercury sign is and how to best communicate with them and what to look out for as well. So let's bring up the slideshow. So first of all, this session is called Thriving During Mercury Retrograde. There is this big kind of idea that Mercury retrograde will be a struggle. But we need struggle, we need challenges in our life, because they're where the lessons come. If you were to win lotto and sit on your couch all day, you wouldn't grow, you wouldn't become a better person. So this, hopefully after today, you'll have a better understanding of yourself, better understanding of what to expect, the tools from Mother Nature that you can use, because no matter what's happening up in the heavens, Mother Nature, Mother Earth loves us and gives us everything we need. So that's the idea of today, is to help you know what to expect, I'm going to give you the weather forecast, and then you're going to know what you need to wear for the next 3 weeks. So we're going to be looking at a couple of different things today. We're going to be working with some different Mercury essential oils. So as we know, everything is energy. Mercury possesses an energy of communication and that logical thought, the conscious mind that we've been talking about, and essential oils do as well. And these 6 essential oils are the ones that I've kind of allocated and worked with a lot to work. There are other Mercury ones as well, but these are all really, really great. Now, I'm going to kind of explain why these are Mercury oils as we kind of go through the session today. But having these in your toolkit will be really, really valuable. If you're wondering what the star sign of every different essential oil is, if you've got my deck, Magic of Essential Oils, you'll actually notice that in all 106 cards on the left-hand side is a planetary symbol. So when we have a Pluto retrograde, which comes on the 1st of May, or we have any of the other retrogrades, because all the planets will be going into retrograde in the coming months, what will happen is you can actually work out, okay, well, which oils work with which planets and which should I lean into there as well. So that's just a little hint for you. The other thing I kind of want to share with you is this idea that the planets are associated with our different chakras. So these 7 chakras, which are the primary, main, basically known chakras of the body, going from the base to the crown, are associated with the 7 astrological bodies that our ancestors could see without telescopes. So you can kind of skim your mind through there. You might know a little bit about, the general energy of the planet. So, for example, a classic one would be Venus being the planet of love. Yeah, it's to do with the heart chakra. So really interesting what happens when Venus goes into retrograde. We get lessons of the heart chakra. So what are we getting lessons of at the moment? Lessons of the throat chakra. So this can be a really interesting way of kind of exploring the different chakras at different times of the year based on when they're in retrograde. So we're obviously going to be talking about essential oils today, but we're going to be talking about crystals as well. Now, based on what I just shared with you, that Mercury retrograde is to do with the throat chakra, what crystals are going to be the best ones for us to work with during Mercury retrograde? Blue crystals. Now, I want to be really, really clear here as well. I'm saying blue crystals, not indigo crystals. So you'll see as we go through the different pictures and the different blue crystals that I recommend, but you'll notice that they're more on that sky blue kind of color rather than that dark blue. So crystals that would not be appropriate for the throat chakra and thus Mercury retrograde in this context necessarily would be things like lapis lazuli, blue sodalite, dumortierite, and so on. Now, if you did plan to reach for one of them, that could be good because Mercury will still affect the conscious mind a little bit, but it's really about how it comes out. And so we want to work with those lighter blue crystals. So let's take a bit of a journey through these different zodiac signs now. We're going to use Mercury in Aries, the first one, as a bit of an example. So one thing I want you to know about astrology, and you may or may not have dived into astrology in a deep depth, but one thing I want you to know is there is no good and bad in astrology. There's no, I've got a good sign or I've got a bad sign or that type of thing. You have what you have and you work with it. And there's probably, depending on your beliefs, a reason why that is, that your soul chose that. The same that we maybe choose, some people believe we choose our parents or we choose our body or we choose to have a certain life experience. Our astrology is our energetic astrological blueprint or DNA. So what you'll find when you have Mercury in any of the signs, there's going to be a great way. There's going to be when you're feeling balanced. And there's also going to be out of balance. As you know, let's just pick a random example. Confidence is a great attribute to have, but being overly confident can be a little bit of a detriment in that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, and you'll see I've kind of written it in this context where you've got those kind of little two-way arrows. So on the left is what happens when we're balanced. And what's on the right is what we have when we're imbalanced. So when Mercury in Aries is balanced, the communication has that Aries kind of energy about it. It's very direct and efficient. We're talking about courage a second ago, very courageous in that way. that if there's something that needs to be said, someone in Mercury and Aries will say it. They'll also be quite joyous in that way. Now, as we go through the slides, what we use is we want to use one oil is going to help to keep us in balance, and the other is going to bring us back when we're not in balance. So when we're in balance, we work with Litsea. Now, Litsea comes from a purple berry. It has this beautiful lemon scent, and it's very much, I call it the oil of laughter. It brings that joyness to it. And Litsea helps us to lighten up. And Mercury in Aries is actually renowned for being they call it the youth or the younger sign of the zodiac. It's like a child. And children, you know what they'll say whatever is on their mind. And a Mercury in Aries will probably say whatever's on their mind as well. And that's what I mean by direct. They'll just, oh, that cup makes you look fat. That would be a Mercury in Aries kind of thing. Maybe that might be them out of the balance or like attacked, but that's the kind of thing that they might say. So Litsea helps. We want, being courageous and being open and being willing to communicate is a great attribute. And this can be really great. And so Litsea will help to foster that. And I will show you how to blend these all together at the end. So bear with me for that. Now, what can happen though, is when Mercury goes into retrograde, remember, this is when we slip into our out of balance and we can find ourselves a bit impatient and a bit abrupt. So you might actually find yourself, if you know a Mercury in Aries, or if you're a Mercury in Aries, you're just like, oh, people are stupid. You're just getting annoyed at people and just becoming a bit short. Because again, you're not afraid to say what you need to say. It can be both bad, and it can work against you as well. So be really careful, especially at work over this Mercury retrograde, for being too impatient or abrupt with people. And this is where, when you find yourself slipping into that, you go into turmeric. Now, turmeric is from a root, so it's from an earth sign. Remember, Aries is a fire sign. So it kind of brings a bit of earth to that fire. Turmeric, what's really great about it as well, and you can see the beautiful pieces of turmeric rhizome there as well, is it's a golden root. So turmeric helps us soothe inflammation physically, it soothes inflammation metaphysically, and it helps us get back or get to the root of what's important. So be careful, Aries, that you don't get too abrupt and you don't point things out and don't say things that upset people, because the key, at the end of the day, I guess what turmeric wants you to do is remember what's really important and to come back and be more efficient with your communication. A crystal that's really great as well is blue topaz. Now, blue topaz, it really creates calm communication, so it will soothe a bit of that fire as well, but it also promotes kind of blissful communication. And again, that Aries energy is a childlike energy, and your communication style may be, if this is your sign, may be quite playful and blissful and joyous in that way. And we want to stick with that. We don't want to get that in, we don't want you having temper tantrums. And so blue topaz would be a really great one to work with. Mercury in Taurus. Now you may go, oh, hold on, we've just got the same slides, but you'll notice that the pictures have actually flipped, and I'll explain that in a second. So those that have Mercury in Taurus, they tend to have quite measured. They'll be quite calculated in what they say. They'll be precise with their words. Very deliberate would be another word as well. Mercury in Taurus as well also has a connection to being quite I can never say this word. I drop it out. Melodious, or they'll have quite a beautiful voice. They'll be able to say things in quite a nice way because they're quite measured in the way that they speak. In their measured and their beauty, this can mean that they can be quite commanding. And I mean commanding in a way that they command attention, not in a demanding way, but in a quite an impressive way, that they're able to impress. But what can happen with Mercury in Taurus is when we're in retrograde, and I do want to point out as well, this isn't just like you're fine when you're not in retrograde and you're in trouble when you are in retrograde. People that are just not good communicators or in environments where they're not able to communicate clearly, or they weren't raised in a family where they're encouraged, they're told to keep quiet all the time and children should be seen or not heard, any of that kind of thing. You may find that they're always in that out of balance kind of thing. It just tends that when a retrograde happens, we slip more into that negative. So they can be sarcastic and they can be condescending. So here we go with turmeric when we're balanced. Again, Taurus is an earth sign, turmeric is an earth oil. It helps us to be very grounded, anti-inflammatory, and speak what's important. exactly what we need from Shurik. When we become a bit sarcastic or condescending, it's normally because of that energy of like you're getting annoyed at people. Litsia encourages you to lighten up. So that can be a really great one. Now, aquamarine. Aquamarine is a beautiful crystal that I feel actually doesn't get enough attention. And it's renowned for beauty. It's actually said to be the favorite crystal of the mermaids. And the mermaids are kind of the epitome of beauty of the oceans. And so this can be a really beautiful one. It allows, you can see that this is the natural piece of aquamarine here. It actually has this beautiful long, it grows in rods. And so it has this energy that ebbs and flows like the ocean. So it allows that communication to kind of flow a lot better. So this can be a really great one for those that have Mercury and Taurus when in their birth chart. Okay, Mercury and Gemini. Now, Mercury actually is the governing planet of Gemini, so this is a really kind of a favorable position. It means that you would be quite a good communicator. You'll be quite entertaining. People will find you engaging. You'll be quite witty, quite playful in that type of way as well. So especially a Gemini that has Mercury in Gemini will be very talkative and very proficient at speaking in that way. I'm a Gemini, but my Mercury is not in Gemini. I'll let you know where it is in a second. But what can happen is that Mercury and Gemini, being all that kind of very air-like energy, with so much going on in the brain, the communication become rushed and scattered. So what we do is lemongrass is really great when we are balanced, if you're a Mercury and Gemini, because lemongrass, it's like a blade. It's also used for detoxing. It's like a sword. I always call lemongrass my sword of light. And so it helps to bring clarity. So it helps to be very clear and precise and to have that clarity to enable us to be witty and entertaining. But when we're rushed and scattered, we reach for a lang-a-lang. Now, hopefully I don't overwhelm you too much, but another correspondence in here, which is really interesting, is that when it comes to floral oils, the Greeks and the Romans connected different flower colours to different planets. And ylang-ylang being a yellow flowers are connected to Mercury. So we also know that ylang-ylang settles us down or calms the mind. If you've had problems sleeping at night because you have an overactive mind, and especially if you've got Mercury in Gemini, then ylang-ylang is going to be a really great oil for you to work with. So, but in this case, when Mercury in Gemini is feeling rushed and scattered, working with ylang-ylang will be really, really great. To help calm them down as well, to be a bit more precise, blue lace agate. And this is a nice natural piece of blue lace agate, but you can still see the calming colours of blue waves. And it's kind of like we're flying over a frozen lake or something like that. Blue lace agate is great for anyone who's just feeling a little bit overwhelmed and needs to kind of slow down and calm down. It's a really beautiful one. So really great for those with Mercury and Gemini, especially during the retrograde, to make sure that they're just calm in the way that they speak, that they don't speak too fast and get kind of overwhelmed. Right. I know we had a Mercury in Cancer here, and this is my sign as well. So Mercury and Cancers tend to be in their communication style and how they relate to people and talk to people, very compassionate and empathetic. So they'll be really kind. They'll be mindful. I know, speaking from my own experience, I'm often, when I'm talking to other people about communication and how to communicate, I'm like, you've got to think about not just what you want to say, but how that will make other people feel. What's the impact of your words on other people? So calculate your words on that. And that's what I do. I'm not just trying to make sure you understand me. I'm making sure that I'm aware of what your reaction to my words will be. And that's Mercury in Cancer. So that's when we're good. And so ylang-ylang can be a really great one to support that as well, because it's a heart chakra oil. So it helps us to kind of bring that heart into the communication with that Mercury energy, so where they all dance together. And it can get overwhelming, but just hang with me and just take what you get from what I say. But this can be a really nice one for helping us to slow down, be compassionate, be open-hearted, be very loving. Ylang-ylang I call the oil of the lovers. Really, really nice in that way. But what can happen, because this can go a little bit out of whack during Mercury retrogrades and other challenges as well, and I've actually experienced this in the last couple of days, you become overly emotional, and overly emotional by other people sharing to other people's emotions as well. Like you really kind of get upset by other people getting upset in that type of way. So this is where we want to bring in citronella. This is another grass oil, and it's like a sword again, but citronella is my favorite oil for helping cut away what I call energetic vampires, or people that drain your energy as well. Now, for those that have Mercury and Cancer, this may be a bit of a like, oh, well, I want to care about people. I don't want to cut them off. We want to have that balanced compassion and empathy where we can relate, but we don't want to become a blubbering mess. That's going to be of no use to us or anyone else as well. So citronella has that beautiful lemon uplifting aroma. It allows us to not take on too much energy and it to actually detoxify that as well, just as it helps to stop things that, insects bugging us or biting us or sucking our blood. Citronella will also stop other people bugging us or irritating us or drawing us down or sucking the life force out of us in that way, but still keeping us uplifted in that way. So it's a really beautiful one to work with to make sure, and it's a leaf oil, so it gets us out of our emotionality and gets us a bit more in the mind as well. So it's really, really nice one to lean into. The crystal is blue calcite. So blue calcite, if you've got a piece of raw calcite, I'd really encourage you, if it's within hand's reach, grab it now, but if not, grab some later, any color of the calcites. And when they're raw, when you rub your fingers over it, feels kind of waxy or soapy. And that's my favorite way of reminding you exactly what calcite does. What does soap do? It washes away things. What does calcites do? It's a cleanser. So calcite's a really great one for helping you just to kind of wash away extra emotion, not get overly emotional in different contexts, and to make sure that you kind of come back into a bit more thoughtfulness. And it kind of balances out the head-heart equilibrium and making sure you're not too much in the heart in that way. That may sound like, oh, we should always be in our heart. Yeah, but we don't want to be drowning in our emotions either. And so blue calcite's a really good one for that. Mercury and Leo. Now you will see there are some double ups because we're just working with the 6. So when we come back to the fire signs, it may be similar to other fire signs. So Aries and Leo have similar kind of oils in this way. So we've got that Leo energy. Leos, you probably have heard about Leos. They normally make sure you've heard about them as well. They're very bold. They're very persuasive in that way. And that's, they're the star of the show. They like to be in the spotlight. And those that can have Mercury and Leo often can be, if they're balanced, they're really good communicators. They're really, proficient in getting their point across and even convincing people of that they're right in that way. But what can happen when they're out of balance is they become dominant. They start to dominate conversations. That boldness is just like overly bold. They can get egotistical and all about themselves, and even lying in that way. To be, I guess another word we could pop in there would be manipulative in some ways as well. So we want to keep them in that bold, persuasive, kind of very, think of a celebrity and how articulate celebrities are, kind of thing. Litsea is great for that. It's that joyous that the Litsea oil brings in again. It's very, very uplifting, very joyous. That's what we want in Mercury and Leo. What we don't want is that dominating, that egotistical, that selfishness, basically. And so we come back to let's ground that a bit because there's too much fire there. If you think about domination, lying, ego, very fiery, very burning, very ouch. So that's where we bring in Earth Mercury oil. So turmeric's going to be really great for the reasons we've talked about before. Now, when it comes to Mercury in Leo, those when they're out of balance, as I said, they dominate conversations. They're egotistical. It's all about them. And that's a bit of a Leo attribute, which can be beneficial in some ways, but can also work against you. So we want to work with angelite. Now, here's a raw piece of angelite. It is rare to find raw bits. You normally find these beautiful tumbled stones, and they may be in different shapes. They've got the soft blue color that you can kind of see on screen with this crystal at the moment. Angelite is my favorite crystal of the throat chakra for helping us to listen more. Now, we often associate the throat chakra with our ability to talk. How well do I express myself? But communication is a two-way street. And most of us are rather proficient at talking and not so proficient at listening. And those with Mercury and Leo, when out of balance, are not good listeners. And so this is where angelite would be really good for you. Mercury and Virgo. Okay, so the Virgo energy. Virgo is the healing sign of the zodiac. So they'll be very precise and very detailed. So that's why we lean in with that turmeric. Like, right, let's talk about what's important. They don't fuss around. They're not going to, beautify any conversations or anything like that. It's just going to be, let's get down to the facts. Let's get it done. They're the kind of people who are, they like spreadsheets. They like to, they'd be great for running meetings because they're like, right, what are we here to do? Let's work through the agenda and let's not kind of go off on tangents. Mercury and Virgo probably wouldn't. So this is where them being an earth sign, working with an earth Mercury oil of turmeric will be really, really great. But in that yearning to be precise and detailed, when they're out of balance, they become overwhelmed when they're trying to get all the details straight in their head so that they can communicate them, and anxious because there are so many details to precisely get in alignment. So then we just bring in the Lexia to help lighten them up, help them be a bit more joyous in that way. And again, blue lace agate's really good for them as well. Now, just why you may go, oh, why is he doubling up? Did he run out of crystals? Well, yes and no. No, I didn't actually. There were others that I didn't pop in. But remember that both Mercury governs Virgo and Gemini. So this is why they've kind of paired together, because that Mercury energy gets the mind getting overwhelmed, thinking too much. And blue lace agate is just so beautiful for calming the mind. Mercury in Libra. Now, again, I don't want to kind of have favorites, but this is the nice one. Mercury in Libra. Libra is all about harmony and balance. These people tend to be the natural diplomat. They'll be the ones in conversation where they'll be, oh, hold on, you haven't said much. What do you think? Let me just go check with everyone else to make sure they're happy with that way. In communication, they can be quite fair, quite just, quite kind in that way. This is where they're really great with an oil we haven't talked about yet, lemon myrtle. Now, lemon myrtle, native to Australia, its gift to the world is mateship. Mateship as in we're all equal, we're all mates, we're all, no one's better than the other. And so lemon myrtle is a great one to lean into to make sure that it brings in this equality, real nice balance in that way. What can happen, though, if you've ever tried to organise anything with a group of people, it's very hard to get everyone to agree all the time. And so Mercury in Libra is can be a bit indecisive when they're trying to take into consideration everyone's kind of thoughts in that way. So this is where, again, ylang-ylang can be really nice to slow down their thoughts, make sure they just come back into their heart as well. Anything to do with Libra is really nice and heart-based. It works best in the heart. So really great for them in that way. And you may not have heard of this crystal. Those that love their crystals, you may, as we kind of go on, especially up to some of what are considered the older signs of the zodiac, there's a few rarer crystals. A Waihi opal, found just in one location in North America. It's got this beautiful powder blue color that you can kind of see on the screen. It's not considered a precious. There's two types of opals. There's the precious opals and I think they're called semi-precious opals, but these ones are not expensive. They don't necessarily always have the glittering in them in that type of way. But this one's a beautiful, beautiful one. It's got a very calming, watery energy to it. And it's actually renowned for helping us just relax and make a decision. Really good for Mercury and Libra. Right. If you've got someone in your life who's in Mercury and Scorpio, my biggest advice to you is don't talk to them about the weather. They probably don't like small talk. They love, Scorpio is a sign of going into the cave, the secrets of the mysteries, going deep. And so those with Mercury and Scorpio, they're going to be, they want to talk about stuff that's important. Let's not just fluff about in that way. And so ylang-ylang can be a really nice one for them kind of sink into that, get to the heart, to the meat of different things in that way. But what can happen, that's how they like to communicate. That's not necessarily how everyone else likes to communicate. Sometimes people need to develop a bit of trust. They need to feel a bit more comfortable. They may not want to be ready to talk about something in that way. And so what can happen is Mercury in Scorpios can get a bit impatient or dismissive. That person's boring. It's got nothing interesting to say in that way. So another thing that you should be wary of is if you do have Mercury in Scorpio, or if you're dealing with a Mercury in Scorpio, is that they can be a bit, what's the word? They can overstep the boundaries. They can ask questions because they want to get into the deep and meaningful. They'll be like, oh, You look like you've been crying. What's wrong? Do you know what I mean? Like they'll go like, that might not be appropriate in a group of 100 people, pointing out that someone looks like they've been crying, that kind of thing. But it's just because that's what they want. And this is where citronella can be great if they do get a bit impatient and dismissive as well, to kind of be able to bring a bit more of that joy in, to cut kind of those Scorpios like to really have strong bonds and draw on those strong bonds, and citronella can just kind of equal that up. Citronella is a really positive, light-bringing oil. Any of the oils that have a lemon scent bring in a bit more light, and Mercury and Scorpios may need to lean into that and not be so dismissive. Citronella is also really great to bring in a bit of community as well. There's another opal that's got this beautiful, you can kind of see the colours on the screen, especially like the most pristine parts are kind of the colours you can see at the top of this opal. And this is called Andean blue opal, or sometimes Peruvian blue opal. Same crystal, just named slightly differently, kind of thing. It's a lot of crystals that are found in South America are very much about inclusiveness and a sense of community. Opals also do have a playful energy about them. You may have heard somewhere along the ways that opals are bad luck. This is actually a myth that was created, and it's believed to have been created by the Chinese, because opals were becoming more and more popular throughout the world, including in Asia, and jade sales were going down. Of course, jade is commonly found in parts of Asia, so they're like, oh, how do we stop people buying opals and come back to jade? Well, we tell people that opals are bad and they're unlucky. They're not. They're actually considered to be quite virtuous in different ways. They have a playful energy. They help us to lighten up, be quite fun, be open-hearted in that type of way as well. So Andean blue opal is a really good one for Mercury and Scorpio. Mercury and Sagittarius. Sagittarians are they're known for being quite lively, quite fiery, quite joyous. They're optimistic and they're inclusive in their communication as well. They're really going to like social events. They're going to like parties. They're going to like community gatherings where we're getting everyone together and working together and talking about ideas and things like that. Litsia is going to be perfect for that kind of thing. So, but what can happen though is there is a risk at these times when they're out of balance of not acknowledging the suffering of others and just going, come on, everyone, like it can't be that bad that your house burnt down and your partner left you and you've got no money. Can't be that bad. Come on, and not acknowledging the suffering of others can come across as being a bit insensitive. And it can also be that they can be a bit unrealistic. They can be a bit Pollyanna, if you've heard that term before, that everything's going to be okay and fine. So, the idea, this is a classic example of how there's no good or bad. We want people to be positive and optimistic and very inclusive in their communication, but within reason, within balance, because if they're overly positive, overly optimistic, then we start falling into these things where other people, remember we were talking about before, communication about people feeling heard. If someone is having a bad time, sometimes they just want to be heard and they don't need someone to kind of boost them up and invalidate their feelings. And that can be a risk in Mercury and Sagittarius if you don't keep that balance. So Litsia will keep that optimism. Turmeric will help us settle down, ground ourselves, and make sure that we are actually listening to what's truly important in communication. There's a beautiful crystal, and this is a beautiful specimen of it right here called blue barite. It's a bit of a tender crystal, and you can buy it in other versions rather than just like this spectacular piece. But it's probably it's a higher vibration crystal that helps us to come up to higher communication, higher forms of communication, higher empathy. It can be really great for even telepathy and kind of just understanding people and taking non-visual cues. So anyone who's a bit clueless when it comes to communication, blue barite can be really great. So this will be a really nice one to make sure that the Mercury and Sagittarians stay positive, but they keep that positive, optimistic attitude while still having empathy for other people as well. All right, been waiting patiently. Mercury and Capricorn, here we go. So your communication will be very grounded and practical. Capricorns are about, the Capricorn energy, I should say, is about success. And so if you know any Capricorns in your life, you'll know that they are very, they're driven in one way or another. They want to accomplish something in their lives. Now, that may not be career success. It may be home success. It may be intellectual or academic success. It may be family success. But they like to have a mountain to climb kind of thing. And so you bring that energy into the communication style. Those that when they're born had Mercury in Capricorn, they'll be very grounded, focused, knowing what they're doing, and practical. in that way. Problem is, because they are so clear on what they want and very practical and grounded, when other people around them aren't like that, they can come across as very insensitive or out of touch. People with a lot of Capricorn energy are normally rather sorted out financially, and they can kind of overlook other people's financial struggles as a bit of an example as well. So here, the turmeric will work in to keep them grounded and practical, but the Lithia brings in a bit of that lightness. And okay, remember that there are shades to people's lives. Don't be out of touch with other people just because you've maybe got your act together in some ways. Make sure you're resonating with other people, and Lithia can be really great for that. Their crystal is any blue opal, would be really great. Again, lighten up. Capricorns the Capricorn energy is so driven, and so it's a great energy to have if any of your planets were in Capricorn. Really, really great for that. But you don't want to be all work, no fun. And so opals will be a really beautiful one. Isn't this a beautiful opal? This is not a piece in my collection. It's a piece in someone else's collection that I just wish I could have. That they let me borrow to photograph one day. I love it. Mercury in Aquarius. So Mercury in Aquarius, they'll be very intellectual, revolutionary, and kind of a bit rebellious. I'm not saying rebel in a way like they'll just cause trouble, but they'll be thinking outside the square and talking outside the square and going, hey, do we need to do that? Is that the way we need to be? And so lemon myrtle does kind of have a energy that helps. I was talking about it being very just and equal before. It does kind of look for, there is a lot of injustice in the world. So lemon myrtle is a really great one for those Mercury and Aquarius to make sure that we're kind of going, okay, well, what's going to be the best for everyone concerned? Aquarius has a very humanitarian energy to it. So in your thoughts and your talk, you'll be quite like, hey, let's make it great for everyone in that way. But there is a risk of them becoming a bit delusional or dismissive of like, let's just change the world in a day. That can't always be done. They can also start to believe what they say too much without question, or will not like being questioned about what they're saying. And so ylang-ylang can be really great for them. There's a really beautiful crystal called Afghanite. Now, really interesting just talking about crystals and where they're found. Often when you find a crystal that just is found primarily in one location around the world, it's really interesting where it's found. So this is a crystal that allows us to speak freely, to speak from the heart, to speak from the mind, but to speak with great eloquence and to speak in a way that inspires and touches the hearts of others. And so very much about free speech and engaging speech. It's a really great one for leaders of any kind of whatever you're trying to lead type of thing. And when we look at the situation in Afghanistan and what it's been like in the last couple of years, and probably really what it's been like for a long, long time, Afghanite is this crystal sitting in the ground around there that's there to support that kind of open communication, which unfortunately at this point in time, it doesn't appear that that country really gets to enjoy. So it is a really great one for also those that have Mercury in Aquarius in their birth chart, because it allows them to come back to how can you speak from a really kind of inspirational way? How can you touch the hearts of others? How can you create those revolutions and those rebellions in a positive way? And at last, we then come to Mercury in Pisces. Again, these being another water sign like those Cancerians we were talking about before, very compassionate, very empathetic, very psychically connected, can really quite tune in. Normally the difference between Mercury in Cancer, they'll be very heart-based and listen with the heart. Mercury in Pisces will listen with the intuition. And that sometimes can be a heart-based intuition as well. But they'll be really compassionate, empathetic. That's beautiful in the way that they talk. But sometimes they can, get a little bit wishy-washy. Pisces is an oceanic energy, so you end up becoming a bit vague and a bit inconsistent. And this is where I'd really lean into lemongrass, because again, we've talked about lemongrass in the past. It brings that real clarity and that real focus in that way. Then for Mercury and Pisces, a beautiful crystal, and probably a great crystal for anyone who's feeling quite scattered with their communication, wants to get it back in order. Definitely work with the crystal I recommended, but blue fluorite is probably one of the best. It's a general good one for Mercury retrogrades. Why? You can see this is a natural piece of fluorite, and you can see that it grows in squares. So any crystal that grows in squares, so fluorites, garnets, pyrites, sodalites, these are all really good at getting things in order. Just like we like to get things in boxes and in our mind and in our lives so that everything is organized, any crystal will help us get our life in order as well. So blue fluorite is really great for those vague and kind of wishy-washy Mercury and Pisces when their communication is just like, what are you on about? Why are you being inconsistent? Why are you not committing to things? Why are you yes knowing, all that type of thing? What are you trying to say? Let's get out there and use that with that blue fluorite. So we've talked about a few oils. Now, so far we've been talking about 6 different Mercury-related oils. Now, this is where the fun and the dance comes in. And bear with me and stick with me. And if you have questions, we can definitely tackle them at the end for sure. Or put them in the chat as we're chatting as well. But we have, obviously, Mercury, the planet is connected to the throat chakra. And the oils, although they're connected to Mercury, they're associated with Mercury, but they're not Mercury. They're lemongrass, they're citronella, they're ylang ylang. And so they have their own energy and tinges as well. So you have each oil is connected to a planet and a chakra. And all the Mercury oils aren't necessarily with the throat chakra. So what we have here is some of the main throat chakra oils. And remember I was saying before that this was a throat chakra lesson. So in a nutshell, the throat chakra oils are really easy to kind of pin. Cypress oils, so that's your leaf cypress oil, but also like things like your hinoki that you can see pictured, as well as nootka can be used as well. Your chamomiles. So at the moment in doTERRA, we only have the Roman chamomile, and we also have the eucalyptuses. And just to know, those that are in Australia, our eucalyptus, which is just blue gum eucalyptus, is different from the old, I think in Europe at the moment, they've got still radiata, and that's what America used to have. But now they've gone, also they're switching to that that blend of eucalyptuses as well. We probably won't get that in Australia because Eucalyptus globulus, which is known as blue gum, is got a lot more research behind it, and so it's easier for us to register with the TGA in that way. But what we can do is we take our throat chakra oils and we blend them with whatever oil we need from our balanced and unbalanced. So you can make your own blend. Now, the eucalyptuses are good for taking heat out of conversation. They're really good. They're cooling, so they stop anger. So if there's angry or frustration or just a lot of those negative kind of attributes we talked about today, eucalyptus can help to bring that out. And as we know, the throat chakra is to do with the respiratory system. Eucalyptus is great for the respiratory system, and so you may want to use some eucalyptuses in your blends that you use. Chamomiles, again, are very calming. They're very gentle. They work really well with things like angelite and blue lace agate to make sure that we are calm and gentle in our communication, because often a gentle nudge is more powerful than a shove. And so if we need to soften our communication a little bit, not weaken, just soften. We've all had an instance where someone starts yelling at you. And we don't just stop there. It's very hard to stop there, listen to what they're saying and not get caught up in that anger. We either get scared and retract and start, backing up, or we fire up back. And so the best communication is that calm, gentle, compassionate, understanding communication. Roman chamomile really helps with that. Cypress is really good for helping to clear away blockages where there is fear around communication and allow communication to flow as well. And hinoki is actually really good for direct. Another one that didn't make it onto the pictorials, but also is a great one, Raven Sarah. If you have that in your collection as well, can be really great. Or Easy Air or Breathe is another one because it helps the respiratory system. Although all the oils in it are throat chakra oils, you could use that. So what you do, let's find an example. Let's go back for a little bit. Let's go to our Mercury in Capricorn. So Mercury in Capricorn, very grounded and practical. You might want to blend some turmeric with those throat chakra oils. You don't have to use all of them. You might go, okay, well, grounded and practical. I might do some turmeric. I might do some hinoki because that's going to keep me very practical. And I might go some cypress, just to make sure the conversation does flow in that way. But if we're looking at, okay, well, what happens when Mercury in retrograde is getting a bit insensitive? Well, we're going to work with the lips here, but we might go, okay, well, add a touch. Oh, okay. So cypress would be really good for that because it's going to help that connection as well. And maybe a bit of Roman chamomile in there as well. So Lipsia, Roman chamomile, and cypress. I can see a bit of nodding there. Yep. So that's kind of, now, which oils are right? Any of the throat chakra oils will be fine with whether you're trying to maintain stick with the balance and bring out the best in you. If that's where you're at, you go, well, let's keep going with what my positives are. But if you find yourself getting into that negative, then grab the negative oil, the Lipsia in this case, and the throat chakra oils, and bring a bit more joyousness and a bit more caring into the conversation. How are the best ways to use these kind of Mercury blends? Well, in the diffuser is really good. Why? Because what happens when we diffuse things? We breathe them in. They come into the respiratory system. And so this can be a really great one. So I'd really encourage all of you after today's session is grab your throat chakra oils, grab if you're feeling balanced or out of balance. I'm sure as I kind of went through yours, you're kind of like, oh, I know where I am right now. And work with that. If you're not sure which one, then I would lean into the one of the out of balance while we're in retrograde. Another great thing you can do is you can make up a roller ball and then roll that on the throat chakra. And that can be really powerful as well. Now, I want to give you a kind of an extra little bit of juice as well. So we've talked very much about the throat chakra and communication and that kind of thing. The great thing is that many of you came along to this presentation. Unfortunately, I didn't have, how many people have we got? 18 billion on this earth? We didn't have 18 billion on the Zoom. So there are going to be people around you that are going to be a bit ungrounded, and they don't know the weather forecast. They don't know about the Mercury retrograde. They don't know how to handle it and keep themselves under control. Now, you understanding them by knowing their Mercury sign will give you an upper hand, but they may still be a little bit kind of crazy. So how do we stop ourselves from getting, overwhelmed by other people's chaos as well, kind of thing? My favorite crystal to lean into during Mercury retrograde is one called Botswana agate. Now, it's a beautiful brown crystal. It's very, very grounding. And what I love about it is it's grounding and empowering. From the brown color, we get the groundedness. But why you actually get those lines in it is it's from Botswana, hence the name Botswana agate. And it's formed over thousands and thousands and thousands of years of volcanic activity. This is like the rings in a tree, but from volcanic eruption after volcanic eruption. You can see a couple of beautiful pieces there at the top of the thing there where you can see those lines so beautifully. And so carrying one of these in your pocket would be really, really great. Arbor Vitae is a cypress oil, although it's called the Western Red Cedar. It is actually a cypress oil, so it's got a bit of throat chakra energy. But again, it's so grounding, so beautiful. It works, the oil is so thick in this tree that no insect will get into it. It won't gnaw at it. So it stops things from bugging us again. It's kind of like citronella, but on a real grounded level in that way. Now, my routine for those that want to work with Arbor Vitae more is this. 3 steps. In the morning, you put a drop of Arbor Vitae in your belly button. And it helps to ground you and bring in that grounded energy for the day. In the afternoon, as you're winding down for the day, you diffuse Arbor Vitae. And at night, when you get into bed, you mix it with a bit of fractionated coconut oil or maybe even a nice natural lotion. Even the rose hand lotion from doTERRA is really nice, and rub that on the soles of your feet. So you can use this at any time, but especially during Mercury retrograde, this combo of carrying a Botswana agate in a pocket is always best, and doing those 3 things with Arbor Vitae can help to ground you during this time as well. Then, once you're grounded, you can then also communicate clearly. So for those of you that aren't doTERRA customers, I put together a bit of a doTERRA pack here, and you can see there's lots of the oils that we've spoken about today that would be really great in there. Balance is one of our grounding blends, really, really nice. It's got big tree oils, which kind of bring that stability in. It's got some camomiles in it, and it's got osmanthus, which is a little orange flower, which smells like peaches and apricots, which brings a bit of joy. So that's a really nice one to lean into as well. There's also a blend called Thinker, and Thinker is a bit of a focus blend. So we want to get that mind really focused as well. And we want to stay positive, so wild orange is in there as well. So this one's normally 220. We've got it down to 170. And anyone who registered for this, if they actually want to grab that, I'll actually throw in a free Roman Calmine, which is not a cheap oil as well. So if you're interested in that, then you definitely need to get back to me as soon as possible, and because that's only available for this month. The other thing, if you enjoyed the kind of content we've gone through today, and obviously this has been I've been talking a lot, and it hasn't been as interactive, but pardon me, this is a course that myself and my very good friend who wrote the book Gifts of Essential Oils for me, Vanessa Jean, we're doing a certified course in spiritual aromatherapy and astrology. So give me 2 seconds, sorry, I'm just going to clear my throat. Sorry about that. So this is basically, this will take you through being able to look at a birth chart and understand not only your Mercury sign, but your Venus sign and your Mars sign and all these different signs. What that means, you'll actually get a guidebook and you'll know all the oils. So you can get someone's chart, get your own chart, and work through all the different oils. So this has just been a little snapshot of kind of what that course might kind of include in there as well. The beautiful thing is, Vanessa is a certified aromatherapist. So she's then going to talk about other different ways you can make blends and other ways you can use these oils for the body and spiritually as well. So it goes so much deeper and so much more thorough. But what happens, and I hope what you started to get from today, is you know a little bit more about your communication style. And I hope when I talked about your Mercury sign, you were like, yeah, okay, I can see how that fits. And okay, yeah, maybe people sometimes do, say I'm a bit abrupt or a bit insensitive or a bit too, delusional or whatever that may be. And that's my lesson. Because ideally what we want to do is we want to be in that harmonious state all the time and not out of balance in that way. This course will allow you to do that. We'll throw lots of other things in. There's crystal stuff, there's angel stuff in there, there's chakra stuff, a whole range of different things. So that starts in a couple of weeks, not long now. And it's actually designed, the syllabus is designed to kind of, as these retrogrades are happening, you'll actually we won't kind of go in order of the planets that we find them, coming out of the sun. So we're not going to go like Mercury, Venus, Mars. We'll jump around in relation to when the planets are going in retrograde. So Pluto, which goes into retrograde in May, is one of the first that we look at. Again, if you're interested in knowing which oils are good for crystals and which ones are good for chakras, and which ones are great for each planet, then you've got my deck here as well. And the oils that I spoke about today, you could put another Mercury oil in there if you felt that was better. My job is to be your guide, to open your mind, to give you different ideas. But this deck will kind of give you a different perspective on how to do that as well. So that is all I have for you today. For those that are on the live class, if there's any questions, please pop them in the chat. I'm just going to, if you scan, I'll bring this QR code up once I wrap up as well again. That will take you to my link tree, which will give you all the different places to find me. I'm a male, so I can't do 2 things at once. So give me 2 seconds to type. That's the link tree there as well. So if you click on that, if you are interested, I'll be sending out the replay for this in the next day or 2, so you'll get that as well. Just reply to that email if you're interested in the kit, if you're interested in the course and you haven't enrolled in that yet. If you need to know, the link tree will take you to where you need to go to find the cards if you want to grab them. They're pretty much at adambarralet.com. It's the best place to get those cards as well. Are there any questions from anyone who's live at the moment before I wrap up? Is there a substitute for elixir? Yeah, I should have. That's a very good question, Kim, because that is a limited time oil in some regions and that kind of thing. What you'd want to do is you'd want to look for a. Let me think. Let me check my list quickly. And forgive me looking side to side. I've got my computer next to my camera today. Eric has elixir. Yes, but that would be that, or clarify it, sometimes called a well. That would be a good option. The other thing you could do, let me just see, because what you're doing is you're using a fire, because it's a fire Mercury oil. So is there any other fire Mercury oils? Let me just check. Top of my head. So what I would actually lean into is kind of the grand substitute when there isn't another fire, Mercury oil in the doTERRA collection at the moment. So what happens is the substitute is you bring in frankincense. Frankincense is kind of the overall healer as well. Frankincense or myrrh. So if you kind of calm something down, you'd use myrrh, but with Lixia, it's normally wanting to lift it up and bring that joyousness. So you'd actually work with frankincense. That would be your substitute. But yeah, beautiful question. Thank you for asking that. That's, yeah, very, very needed to be asked. Any other questions at all? So keep typing if you do have any other questions. And just in summary, I just wanted to wrap up and say thank you very much, first of all, for choosing to join me, and hope it's been insightful. What I encourage you to do now is go and dive deep into your Mercury in your Mercury sign. And if you want to learn more about that, all you need to do is just jump on Google and Google Mercury in, so for me, I do Mercury in Cancer birth chart. And you're going to find lots of different pages, lots of different authors that are going to talk more about your communication style and what that'll mean in both a balanced and an unbalanced way. If you're doing a certified course, you'll get a handbook that'll actually have those types of descriptions in as well, so you can always refer to that. So dive into yourself, worry about yourself first, fasten your seatbelt first, and make sure that you are aware of where you can slip into that negative or that unbalanced state, and make sure you don't, because that's failing your communication. We all want to be the best communicators we are. So work on how you can take advantage of your strong suit in your Mercury sign, and then probably the people that you communicate with the most intimately, get their Mercury signs and start working with them and that as well. So thank you very much for all your kind words in the chat. Looks like, yes, a couple of you that are already here are already doing the certified course. So I'm excited about that. It's going to be so much fun. It's going to be, yeah, lots to dive into. I will leave that QR code up for anyone who needs to scan that and do that. But apart from that, enjoy Mercury retrograde. Remember that retrogrades are not times of tragedy and chaos. They're times of challenge, of awakening, and of lessons. So those that embrace the lessons of the retrogrades are those that will ascend and become the best versions of themselves. Until I see you again, take care and blessed be.